Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols Plus, a PlayStation podcast supplement. My name is Colin Moriarty, and returning to the show so quickly, so graciously, so excitingly, is Shuhei Yoshida, calling in from Japan. Good to see you, my friend. How are you today?
Greetings. Doing so well. I've been super busy, thanks free after I left SIE. I don't remember when did we talk, about a month ago or 2 months ago?
Yeah, 2 months ago probably. I think it was in March.
Yeah, it was really fun, and thank you for having me back. The idea you had for this session is really exciting to me. No one had come up with this kind of idea. You know, it's all great.
Awesome, thank you. I'm excited to have you here. I appreciate you coming back so quickly. I know you've been busy. You were just in South America, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was at the Gamescom Latam. It used to be called the Big Festival, Brazilian Indie Game Festival, and I was there 3 years ago as a guest, and I was asked to come back again, and the event has merged with Gamescom, so it's much larger now.
Right.
And still the indie part, the big festival, with the brand, is inside the Gamescom Latam. So it's a marriage of larger companies, booths like Nintendo and other publishers, and also lots of indie games from Brazil and Latin America. So it was really fun.
Awesome. And yeah, I saw they had more than 100,000 people, which is great.
Yeah, getting bigger.
Yeah, burgeoning market down there. People ready to buy games, make games, more importantly. And I saw, congratulations, is it USP Inc.?
YOSP Inc. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. And that's going to be that's like your consultancy and you're working. So I'm sure people are already knocking down your door.
Thankfully, I have signed up with for a company I've been very close with, friends with, and I respect creativity and the passion for these younger people that I work with. So I've been, politely kind of declining for any other offers that I still get.
I'm excited to see what you work on, and people are going to be lucky to have you. I'll be interested to continue to follow your worldwide travels as well, man. Tokyo to Brazil it's a hell of a flight.
I'm going to Summer Game Fest next month.
Oh, cool. So you'll be in LA. Dustin will be there, our producer, great. And Brad Ellis, who does our show Summon Sign, used to be at Easy Allies. He'll be there. Mm-hmm. So maybe they'll run into you.
Yeah.
I don't go to shows anymore. I'm too lazy.
I know. Well, not necessarily too lazy, but
too homebody-ish. Let's say at this point, I've had my fill. All right. So Shu, as you said, the idea I approached you with, because I've been really enjoying watching you on these different interviews and reading your different interviews and seeing you being able to talk finally and be so open as we discussed on our conversation. However, I felt like, and I'm sure you feel this, although you're too gracious to say it, and you're not going to say it in the moment, it's getting repetitive, probably, a lot of the things you're talking about. This is why I wanted to watch Kind of Funny's interview with you and others before I got to the nitty gritty, so I wouldn't ask you redundant questions. And I was thinking about, everyone loved having you on. I don't know if you saw the reaction to our show, but it was extraordinary. Everyone loved it. We had a bunch of people on Patreon listening to it. I think it's up to 50,000-ish views on YouTube.
Even at the PlayStation, people asking me you should show up, talk to Colin, the people who really love the, podcast Beyond Days with you and Greg and, Ryan and Clemens. And, that was really fun, the early days.
Yeah, I loved it. And I think about those days. I mean, I wouldn't be here without those days. And so I was like, I want to have Shu back on, but let me think of something that won't be so redundant for him. And so I approached you and I said, like, what if I just asked you about 10 random games that you greenlit, helped shepherd, produce as your time as the head of Worldwide Studios, both in the first and second party capacity. Obviously, we emailed back and forth, and we talked about this on our conversation that, second party is still first party. You're still working with these games. And so I was like, all right, great. So I emailed you a few days ago because we had set this up a while ago. And I was like, do you want the games ahead of time or do you want me to keep them to myself? You said either is fine, but it would probably be better if you got them ahead of time so you could mentally prepare. So I sent you the games. And what did you think when you saw the list before we get into
very interesting list. Kind of focused on PS3 Vita days. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm curious why these games led to your attention.
Yeah, I think and people will see, I wanted to do something that I felt was eclectic and touched on games that don't really get discussed very much, but that I think were important or relevant in their own ways. So everyone talks about God of War. Everyone talks, I love The Last of Us. I love Uncharted. We'll actually talk about an Uncharted game. But I wanted to get into the nitty gritty of other things that you helped shepherd that maybe flew under the radar. Maybe some people never even played some of these games, but this is definitely going to be for the hardcore PlayStation nerds out there. And I think they're really going to like this conversation. So,
very interesting list of games that people do not raise, first when they ask about what are PlayStation games, right?
I'll tell you why when I get to each of them. I'll tell you what I was thinking about with why I wanted to talk about them. I guess we'll begin right off the bat with, and this is the game I had in mind actually when I emailed you the idea, which is the game Mag. From Zipper Interactive.
Massive action game.
Right. Massive action game came out early 2010 on the PS3. The entire thing about it was 256 online players can play at the same time on PlayStation 3. Yeah. It ran until early 2014. So into the PS4 era, the MAG servers were still up. And I was interested to read about this. I don't know exactly how to say his name. Is it Ed Byrne or Ed Byrne? He was the director of the game and the director of SOCOM 4. And I just thought it was interesting. I was reading about him. He's the design director at Turn 10 now, the Forza studio. So he really kind of catapulted into something pretty big after working at Zipper. It's Ed Byrne. He's listed as the creative director of that game and SOCOM 4, the ill-fated SOCOM 4, at least on Moby Games. So what are your memories of this game? Because I actually have pretty specific memories of this game. It seemed ambitious. And the reason that I wanted to bring this game up was because it seemed actually quite ahead of its time. Not unlike a lot of other things. PlayStation Home, I think, was something that was way ahead of its time. And a few other products that you guys have done. But having an influx of players play a game like this was really unheard of. And now games don't really get up to 256 players, I guess, but they're huge now. What are your memories of massive action game?
Yeah. Well, you are totally right. We are so excited, when Zipper suggested, proposed that they're gonna work on this title. So, we had a really good success during PS2 days with SOCOM series with Zipper. You remember, we had, we launched on PS2 what we called broadband adapter or network adapter that had both broadband connector and the modem, so that light online games like sports games can be played through modem as well. But people who had broadband already were able to play richer online experience. And for the launch, so SOCOM was the launch title for PS2. SOCOM was the launch title for PS2 network adapter.
Right,
one
2002.
Of the 4 titles. Yeah, one of the 4 titles, along with like a Twisted Metal game. And what they came up with was the, I used to call, 3 almost ambitious, too ambitious ideas. So broadband only game, and and the bundle, every copy should be bundled with the USB headset, because Seth Luigi, the producer, and Zipper Interactive, the developer, believe that the voice chat for these type of games, it's a collaborative co-op game, is crucial. So everyone who plays this game should have a voice chat capability. So of course that limit the volume of production, right? Stamping DVD is so easy. When the game is a hit, it's very, very quickly we are able to produce. But with everything, game has to be bundled with a headset, that's the hardware. It's a huge risk in terms of creating too much inventory or missing the sales when the game really became a hit. And of course, that will increase the cost of goods, so that we have to sell the title with higher price than regular product. So all these three things combined, I was like, are you sure you want to do this? And they're like, yes, and that was really the reason for success of SOCOM. So during PS2 days and on PSP as well, Zipper did multiple, SOCOM games, maybe 3 PS2 and 2 PSP or 2 or 3, very, very successful.
Yeah, SOCOM 1, 2, and 3 were PS2, and then they did Fireteam Bravo on PSP, and then went back to PS2 for Combined Assault, and then Fireteam Bravo on PSP.
Okay. Yep. So 6 SOCOM games. And moving on to PS3, of course, every developer and producer says, became more ambitious. And, these days, during PS2 days, including PC games, online games like FPS games were trying to increase the number of players, fighting, 16 to 32 to some games, I think, had like a 64 player, massive, battlefield, amazing. However, their presentation was 256 players at one time, and we were like, including all the business people who are, those marketing executives who attended this presentation. They are like, yeah. So, we totally supported the development. And of course, because it's a, technical challenge as well as, new IP and game design challenge. So it must have taken many years to develop. I think at that time, Zip was large enough to be able to work on multiple projects. So I think SOCOM 4, the, single player only game, on the other hand, SOCOM 4, I think these two projects were going in parallel, at the same time. So one to really focus on massive, battleground, 256 players, and on the other, just focus on story and all these cinematic, like action, shooting.
Right.
That was initiated and inspired everyone by the Call of Duty 4. That was an amazing game, wasn't it? In terms of
course.
presentation. Yeah, so that really inspired, all the developers. And so let's focus on single player on SOCOM 4, and let's focus on huge online games on Mac. And as you mentioned, SOCOM 4 was very unfortunate launch. But the Mag, I think Mag did pretty well. I think we are pretty happy how it did. Maybe I'm forgetting. I don't remember we had any big technical issues or anything like that.
Yeah, I remember it being fairly well received. Like the audience, the Podcast Beyond audience liked it. I think it got pretty good scores. I think that, and you're right. So Mag came out right in the beginning of 2010, and then SOCOM 4 came out April 2011. So they were, I guess, at the same time. And as you noted, SOCOM 4 put into the meat grinder, although unintentionally so, because of the PSN outage. For people that don't know, that basically destroyed SOCOM 4, because while it was not a true online game, it was a co-op game that required people to play it. And I think, people couldn't, I don't think, if I remember correctly, I think you might have even had to be online to play it or something, or had to have a PSN connection. It really screwed it up.
Online play was disabled.
Right. It was, so as I wanted to, that's good information about Mag, but I was wondering, as we exit this particular one, what are your memories of Zipper? And like, I think you and I have discussed this in the past. Like, I feel kind of bad for them. Maybe a little bit is because Jeremy Dunham, who founded Podcast Beyond, ended up at Zipper. And so we had a little bit of a personal connection there. He ended up writing Unit 13. I thought Unit 13, by the way, was dope. And I know I
loved Unit 13. I really loved the mission, structure, everything like 30 minutes, you can play on portable. I really loved the game.
Me too. I thought it was really impressive, especially considering how quickly they made it. And it just seemed like same thing happened, I guess, with some other studios. I think Liverpool was another, where they kind of just got subsumed by this Vita game, and then it came out, and then they kind of went away. Big same thing happened to them too. Do you feel like I think we touched on this a little bit, but just to kind of touch on it again, Zipper a studio like Zipper would be pretty useful to Sony now, right? Do you feel like maybe having ridden it out and trying to? Well, I mean, that's easier said than done, right?
Yeah. In a larger context, you are totally right. So we had during PS3, we had Insomniac doing Resistance, and the Guerrilla doing Killzone, and Zipper doing SOCOM. So we are really big on FPS, and developers, these good developers are really putting their best effort into these online multiplayer games, and we are very excited to support it. However, combination things like because we are making games on only one platform, that was by design disadvantage to have online games. You want to have as many players, right? Like a cross-platform. You want all your friends to play together, but unless everybody is on PlayStation, you are not able to enjoy playing these games together for our games. And of course, number of users we could reach were limited. These games are, regularly pretty big budget games for that time.
Right.
It's much small,
quaint
considering from now. Yeah, it's tiny now. However, it was, AAA that time. And of course, Call of Duty was massive, and massive on PlayStation as well. So, I don't remember if it was my thinking or management thinking, or let's get out of FPS, or it was more, developer side, studio side thinking, we cannot compete on this, genre. You want to move on to something different, like single player, action adventure games that the Insomniac and Guerrilla did. And that was successful by itself. But, in my mind, we intentionally left the FPS field. We thought, we cannot compete, we should rather do something else. And somehow Zipper didn't, we didn't have Zipper to do the same. And, I really don't remember what were the conversation at that time, why we came to the decision to shut it down. Yeah, shutting down the studio is always, sad. It's like a last resort kind of decision.
That's all good. By the way, do you hear that clicking noise? Is there a clicking noise that I'm?
Oh, do you hear?
Yeah. Is it you? That's. Oh, okay, I don't hear it anymore. I thought maybe it was my microphone or something. Sorry.
Okay.
I just didn't want.
Oh, maybe it's this.
Oh,
yeah. This is really fun.
Yeah, it's a fidget thing. Yeah, it's going to drive someone crazy.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. It's all good.
Just a habit.
No, totally understand. I fidget with just my pen. Okay, that's good information about Zipper. And we discussed that a little bit when you were on last time, which I think is really salient information, actually, which is, and I think you were right, actually. You can't compete with Call of Duty. You can't compete with Battlefield. Even Titanfall really was unable to compete. A lot of this free-to-play stuff now is doing it. So I actually think your instincts were somewhat right about Zipper. I just wonder where a Zipper with 10 or 15 years more experience would be now that you really could have needed them. And I don't know how you feel about this, but I'm of the mind that SOCOM could live again. That like the SOCOM franchise is actually, because people were always like, bring back Resistance, bring back Killzone. I'm like, that's cool, but SOCOM to me.
For a long time, there's so many dedicated SOCOM fans asking to, we want SOCOM. They wanted to, revive, they wanted us to revive SOCOM, and they wanted, some people tried to recreate the server so that they can play by themselves. I don't know if their effort was successful or not. But we discussed internally, and SOCOM, actually, I never discussed this, but had some challenge in the, theme and topic as well. Because it was like a US Navy SEALs going to the other country,
right?
And their people in other country, and your mission is to, kill them, right?
Yeah, like go to some third world country and extract someone or whatever.
So it works well for the American people who are, patriot. But if you live in these countries, how would you feel, right?
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. I always said, I mean, this is really a bit of apples and oranges, but specifically the success Ubisoft has had with Rainbow Six Siege, I was always like, it would be interesting for SOCOM to fight on that terrain, like 4 players, little squad-based thing. Almost the anti-mag, where mag really required a huge player base to survive. You could do something smaller. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's over now.
Okay.
The next game I wanted to...
we have 1 hour for 10 games, right? So we spend 20 minutes for one game.
Oh, do we only have an hour? Then I should really move quicker. I'm sorry. Is that the time we... Otherwise, we can take our time.
We budgeted 1 hour. You send me invite for 1 hour. I could extend to 90 minutes.
Okay, we'll do 90 minutes. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, we go a long time. Micah just makes our calendar invites, I think. But we go for as long. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to... You're right, though. We need to move quicker then. All right. So I wanted to ask you about PS3's Twisted Metal, which came out February 2012. That was the second game I had in my mind.
That's the one. Like, until you sent me that email with a list of games, honestly, I had forgotten about this game. I'm so sorry, Dave and Scott, and then I remembered. What I remembered was when we announced the game at E3, we had that truck, right? Ice cream truck with sweet tooth in it. And Dave and Scott came out, and so it was all days of E3. E3 announcement was important, and we prepared, for a long time. Company spent money to recreate the truck, the drivable truck. So I hopefully that was received well, and but in terms of game, how it did, I do not. I remember the PS2 Twisted Metal Black, the game they worked. The Twisted Metal before that worked really, really well. It sold lots of units, and I love the game, Twisted Metal Black, because it was the return of Dave Jaffe's Twisted Metal after, he moved on from Twisted Metal 2. 3 and 4 were created by a different team. But for the launch of PS2, Santa Monica Studio prepared the original team, between, Scott Campbell and Dave Jaffe to create Twisted Metal Black. So that game, I really have did a very spot special position in my heart. But somehow PS3 Twisted Metal, I do not remember as much. So what do you remember about the game?
I remember the ice cream truck thing, and I remember Jaffe specifically lying straight up about it, because it was started to leak or something. And then he was like, and I think he had started to say, like, I'm not going to be there. It's not happening and all that kind of stuff. And then he came out. He'll have to remind me of this. But then I remember people being like, you lied. And he's like, yeah, I lied. Like, what do you think? I'm going to ruin the entire reveal of the game. I remember quite a bit about it. I remember going down to San Diego to like, they were doing QA sessions or whatever early on. And I remember being there, like in the big room with Jaffe and Scott. But it's not my kind of game. I mean, I think the biggest thing I wanted to ask you about was, like, why didn't it hit? Because I was a little surprised. This was one of those games that surprised me that it didn't do well, but it came out. It was like PlayStation All-Stars was later that year. Starhawk was later that year. We had Uncharted 3, I guess, online in 2011. So there was just a lot of things. Killzone 3 in 2011. So there was a lot of online stuff, I think, splitting people up. But I remember Twisted Metal, I thought that was going to be way bigger. And it seemed like it was kind of, it really was the end of the franchise in some sense. I mean, now we have the Peacock show, which I love. I think it's great, actually. But the game kind of never went. It was just surprising to me. I feel like Twisted Metal is one of those really powerful IP that
somehow, maybe because of Dave's imagination didn't cross the ocean, somehow Twisted Metal wasn't as popular outside the United States.
Right.
I cannot tell why, can you tell from the theme or characters or?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, maybe it is honestly, maybe it's a little 90s in some sense, right? In its presentation, it feels a little older. I think a lot of people do feel like Black is the seminal Twisted Metal game. And like you said, that is like pure Jaffe. Like you said, Jaffe did 1 and 2 and then left. And I think he has like I talked to him a little bit about it, but I don't think he likes Twisted Metal 3 and 4 because he didn't endorse them or do anything with them. He didn't design them. So he put his everything into Twisted Metal Black. And then, I think the thing I feel bad about with Jaffe, he's a personal friend. So, I mean, it's personal there, but I feel like he had really good ideas and they didn't really come together like later in his design career. Drawn to Death is a great example. Like he and I talk about that pretty often where I'm like, this is such a great idea. It's too bad it wasn't a single player game with a campaign. It would probably be a cult classic today. So I just think he tried, but I don't know. But I do think a lot of it has to do with just that PS3 era, lots of online competition, but also it wasn't really the online machine. Xbox 360 was the online machine in some sense. So that's my opinion. I don't know. All right. Since we have just a little bit more than an hour, I'm going to jump to a game I wanted to do a little later, but I definitely want to ask you about, is Resistance 3.
Oh, okay. This
is a game I love. It's arguably my favorite single player FPS.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I absolutely adore it. Came out in September of 2011, as people will remember, from Insomniac. Resistance Fall of Man was launched PS3 2006, and then Resistance 2, which I also love, is 2008. They got another year basically to work on this game. I remember it being revealed with the railroad, the rail car trailer. I think it was live action actually. It was really, really cool. Marcus Smith was the director. Buddy of mine, Drew Murray, is the designer. Drew Murray and Marcus would later go on to work on Sunset Overdrive for Xbox together. Marcus Smith is now the director of Wolverine. Drew Murray left Insomniac to go to the Initiative and then came back. So he's back at Insomniac as well.
Your knowledge about Insomniac is amazing.
Thanks.
Best in the industry.
Thank you. And then John Paquette was the writer, and John Paquette I don't know if he's still involved with Insomniac, but he wrote a bunch of the Ratchet games. He wrote both Spider-Man games or helped writing them, and then Sunset Overdrive. So this is a really great team, and I love Resistance. In the Resistance Killzone argument, I was always on Team Resistance, although I like them both. What went on here? Let me position it like this. I think we all overestimated how this game sold, because in the Insomniac leak, when all that data leaked, we found out that it only sold like 2 million copies. And it makes a lot more sense through that lens why it wasn't followed up. But what are your memories of Resistance 3?
Do you remember how many units Resistance 2 sold?
I think it was like 4 or something like that.
So 4 became 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, in my mind, of course, Resistance 1 was the launch title for PS3, and the game showed how good PS3 could be, right? At the launch, all third-party developers are so struggling to get the game running on PS3, and many multiplayer platform games for the launch year or maybe second year as well. Many games, Xbox version was better looking, even though our claim of PS3, amazing supercomputing machine. However, Insomniac, showed, PS3, if you use it well, can create a really good looking, good playing game. And that was Resistance 1. And Resistance 2, I remember, was made it even bigger. And we are so excited, and the company supported. But something about Resistance 3, of course, we supported Insomniac. Didn't they change something about the game? Like lead character? Or...
Yeah. It was a different character because Capelli, I think, was the character in the first two, and then you go to... Or no, Nathan Hale is the character in the first two, and then Capelli becomes the character in the third one. Yeah. That was so. It was a major change, and they got rid of. Well, I think there was online multiplayer, but I think they also just de-emphasized it and really made it about the campaign. Because you're right, Resistance 2 did have those huge maps, and the 10,000 kill trophy was like the worst thing ever in Resistance 2. Oh my god, I hated it.
That's so bad.
That's horrible, a horrible thing. So I guess I'm disappointed because I feel like in some sense, like Resistance was part of the heritage of story-driven Sony games, and was kind of, it just kind of seemed like it was forgotten about. I do know this. I wonder what you think of this. I know that people at Insomniac were really upset about the advertising campaign for it because it had Kevin Butler on a horse with the PlayStation Move rifle, whatever it was called, and they had sharpshooters, right? And I remember them being like, it makes it seem like it's a move game, but it's not.
I do remember that. That was misleading,
right?
Yeah.
I also think that and I told them this straight up because I think Ollie Moss is awesome, and I actually really like the box art. I have it back there on I have a whole copy, a signed copy from the entire team of Resistance 3 on my shelf. People won't be able to see it, but I love that cover, the orange and white cover, but I don't think it's a good cover for store shelves, and I think that didn't help it either. It's too, it should have been the inverse, and it should have been something more like, someone shooting a chimera head off or something that will attract
that game
people.
Also supported 3D TV.
Right, exactly.
Another difficult initiative.
Right, it was right in that pocket
to support.
Right, exactly. It was right in that 2010, 2011 Move 3D. Online pass. So what? The other thing that I was told, although I don't know if you have any memory of this, is that the game was originally was supposed to originally tease a fourth game.
Was it?
And that they kind of, the ending was changed basically to wrap it up. I don't know if you have any memory of that.
Yeah, one thing I was curious was recent, Ted's exit interview. I forgot, which media he was on.
Right.
He mentioned, he was asked, what game he would have liked to do, but he wasn't able to. And he mentioned Resistance 4, right? But I don't remember we had that discussion. What I remember, maybe I'm forgetting, conveniently.
Yeah.
But what I remember is, after Resistance 3, they were really into this, we are independent, we have to own our own IP.
Right.
And we wanna, so that negotiation was really difficult because Resistance, we own the IP, right? So, if they are really into, and they did that with EA and Microsoft, right? And they believed in, and I think it's really natural for developer to be able to control their own fate, right? If they own the IP. So, and Insomniac was really successful, and for their next, target to become able to being more independent and own their own IP. And there are publishers who are accommodating that types of, project like EA or Microsoft.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So in my mind, that was the biggest initiative from Insomniac management, including Ted. So if my memory was true, why would he want to do Resistance 4? Right? Because it's Sony's IP.
Right. Maybe now it would be different because now they're back in the now they're fully in the family and they have to work on. And they're working on so many licensed things that I think it's cool in the beginning and then probably pretty demoralizing, I would say, to work on Spider-Man for 12 years or something.
Spider-Man, it's really funny story. How we were able to do the Spider-Man, that I heard from Connie. She was managing the relation with Insomniac. She said that, so we were friends, even after they did project for EA or, Microsoft, we had, constant communication, and we are doing, Ratchet game as well. But the way they agreed between Ted and Connie were, so, Insomniac wants to own IP, and Sony wants to own IP. How about both of us don't own the IP?
That's
and
awesome.
They're like, let's do it.
That's great because that is kind of how they became. They were doing Ratchet a little bit, Ratchet 2016 into the Nexus, but that really brought them back into the Sony fold. I think was doing that game, and I love that story because I think, unfortunately for them, because I have a deep, well of love for Insomniac, I think that whole initiative of them going off on their own blew up in their face, and I think
And they learned a lot, right?
Yeah, they did. And they
that
had
didn't
a lot of,
kill them, though that made them stronger,
right.
they say.
But I think they're lucky to have had a benefactor like Sony to come back in and say like, oh, like it's like, oh, I want to go date other people. Yeah. And then you realize like what you had, and it's like, oh no, I really love you the most. I can't believe how bad it is out there. But because I felt bad for them with Sunset Overdrive was a cool game, and I think it was just by virtue of it being on Xbox, it just wasn't going to get the appropriate attention. If that game was a PlayStation game, it would have been much bigger. And I think everyone knows that, but that's the way it went. And then I feel bad for them with that EA game Fuse, because I think, do you remember how EA totally messed with it?
Yeah, changed the characters, right? Yeah,
the worst.
Tone.
I encourage people to go look up the box art for the game Fuse. It's the worst box art you've ever seen in your life. It's like everyone's faces are cut off. I couldn't believe it. Like, it was originally called Overstrike, and it was
that's right.
And it was totally stylized and beautiful.
Yeah, that's Insomniac's humor, right?
Right.
It's always.
And then EA EA'd it. And but then they worked with Game Trust, which was GameStop's publisher. They worked with Oculus, so they tried to work with a bunch of different people. But but they came back into the fold. As far as Resistance is concerned, though, I've told this story in the past because it's really a harmless story. It's not really it wasn't told to me like off the record necessarily, but I remember being in Scott Rohde's office once a long time ago. When I would go to San Diego, I would stop by and see him or whatever. When I was at the studio, and I walk in and he's like, "What do you think about a Resistance 4?" I remember him saying that to me, and this was probably in 2015, 2016, maybe. And what I always loved about it was we never see the Chimera. That's what a lot of people don't realize is the Resistance enemies you see, like the enemies we know them, are humans. We never actually see the aliens. And I think what I was told was that Insomniac wanted Resistance 3 to kind of end and bring you to the Chimeran homeworld for the first time. And then it would kind of show you the Chimera, and Resistance 4 would kind of go from there. And what I was told was it was actually their pitch for it was very similar to The Last of Us in terms of post-apocalyptic. In other words, I think you or your people were like, we already kind of have this thing going now. We're with a post-apocalyptic feel, the zombie enemy, whatever. We don't really need to do that again. So that's what I was, over time kind of put together. But whether or not that's the real story remains to be seen. I wanted to ask you about Killzone Shadowfall, since we're talking about
we talked about SOCOM Resistance now, Killzone.
Right. That's all the shooter. We won't have any shooters after this. There's none left. I wanted to ask you about this game and about Killzone generally, because this Shadowfall is another one of those games I feel bad for, where I'm like, they got Killzone to a new stage, colorful, vibrant, exciting, political, all that, and it seemed like it was too late. Like it was Killzone was already kind of, I don't know, maybe you remember it differently, but it felt like
I remember differently.
I gave it an 8 at IGN. I remember reviewing it, and people were like, "You're out of your mind," And I'm like, "No, I like it. I think it's a great game." But a lot of people didn't agree. What are your memories of Killzone Shadowfall, the PS4 launch game?
Yeah, Shadowfall. So, of course, Killzone 2 was huge in terms of PR, right? The debut trailer before the launch of PS3.
Right. With them climbing over the wall.
Yeah. And there's a controversy of was it pre-rendered, was it real time? And Jack Tretton saying it was real time, even though it was
it's absolutely not real time.
Yeah. But that really pushed the team to try to get the graphics quality as good as the trailer. Anyway, so Killzone 2 was great, Killzone 3 was great, and in my mind, totally, the Killzone Shadowfall was a victim of being the launch title. Yeah, I clearly remember when I was playing the games in alpha stage or, close to beta, I had, some questions about some of the levels, and I was talking with Steve, the game director, why this is that, can you change this or that? And of course, it was too late, to make changes. And he said, well, we had the fixed release date. That's the launch title. So they knew, he said, we knew these are the issues and people will struggle. Like, you remember when one level, going down the, like a hole or some cylinder inside the cylinder, it was so hard, unnecessarily hard. These levels, he said, of course, if it was not the fixed release date, we would have gone back and redesigned these levels. And it was just one example. There are a few others, as they play test. And usually they play test, multiple times, right? They test and see the issues and change it, polish it and test it and confirm or rework. So, distance for Killzone Shadowfall, because it was a launch title and launch didn't move, launch of PS4 didn't move. So they had to decide, oh, this is good, we have to move on.
Right.
So that was the reason, even though Killzone's 2 and 3 were really high Metacritic, really polished game, they are not able to do the same path for Killzone Shadowfall. So we, I shouldn't say we, I, as a head of Warlord Studio, probably, pretty much I made Killzone franchise to die by making it the launch title. And they were confident. They took on the challenge, right? Like Insomniac took on the challenge to make the PS3 launch. Guerrilla thought that, yes, we can do it, we'll do it. And they did it. But what they didn't know that they learned was having fixed date for game development, especially for large title, is really risky.
Yeah. It's funny, man. Like, I remember that year 2013 especially so it was like the fall of 2013, because Killzone Mercenary came to Vita that September. And then 2 months later, PS4 launches with Shadowfall. And I remember thinking at the time, because I wasn't really super into the original Killzone. I like the PS2 one. I was like, Supermassive ended up porting it over to PS3. There's a good way to play it there, but 2 and 3 were obviously way stronger. And I thought, I remember playing Mercenary, which I think is awesome. Mercenary is like one of the great Vita games, in my opinion. It absolutely understands what the Vita is so well.
I loved it. Yeah.
And then Shadowfall comes out and I'm like, man, it's like a Killzone renaissance. From my perspective, there was like a different path where if the games were received a little bit differently, that would have been really like the next chapter of new Killzone games. And instead, Killzone just kind of went away. And
Well, still again, the thinking was FPS really hard to compete, especially online. We had to have players only on PlayStation, and the launch, cost of the single player mode, they were not able to do the enough path to polish it. But on positive note, Killzone Shadowfall was absolutely did the work to showcase PS4, graphics. It was beautiful. It had the amazing vista, right? Vista of cityscape.
It was awesome. It felt so different than all the other Killzone games.
Yeah. And do you remember the Gamescom keynote? I was there. So the setup, it was before the launch of, PS4 and, Killzone Shadowfall. The same year in August, we are in Germany and, we are doing the, keynote. And before the keynote started, somehow there's a sofa on the stage. And, I walked, still very dark. I walked to the sofa and I'm sitting. And there's a spotlight showing me sitting there with a controller.
Right.
And the plan was I start playing Killzone Shadowfall there. That was the plan for the start of the show. However, I don't know if anyone heard about this accident. The whole power went down. Rebooted the whole system, video system, decided they have to reboot right before the show started. So I was sitting on the sofa, not knowing that happening, and waiting for the screen to show the game, and I start playing. We just did the rehearsal earlier in the same day, but the screen never showed up. I was like, what's going on? For how long I should be sitting here? And luckily, it showed up after a minute or two. It felt like the longest minute for me. And I played the game and I showed the controller and walked away. That was great. And the plan was to, Jim Ryan, head of SC Europe at the time, walked out and start his presentation. But the system shut down again after the Killzone Shadowfall demo. So the screen was black and Jim was waiting for it to come back. And it didn't come back. So they decided, Jim started presentation without the screen.
I vaguely remember this. I vaguely remember this.
That was awful.
The thing about Shadowfall was it sold by, I think 2 months after the PS4 came out, it had already sold 2 million copies. Obviously, this was by virtue of it being
PS4 launch was very successful.
Right.
And that's what we got. Shadowfall was the, kind of, marquee title for the launch.
Right. And I will say we got a knack too, but not a Killzone Shadowfall 2, which is interesting. But
knack sold 1 million units as well.
Yeah, obviously you guys wouldn't have done it.
Much lower budget game.
Right, of course. I'm only busting balls anyway. I think it's funny. People always, a big conversation in PlayStation fandom is, could Resistance come back? Could Killzone come back? And I'm like, well, I think you'd bring one back. And a lot of people want Resistance back because it feels maybe unfinished. But I actually would want Killzone back just because I think there's something so appealing about the Helghast. Those red orange eyes.
The personality in the world.
And I imagine the HDR screens with those deep blacks and those eyes popping up. But also I think that I think people underestimated the political nature of the Helghast and the Vectin and like the allegory there about them sharing a world with like a wall built around it and stuff. It seems so current that they could really take advantage of it. And
Guerrilla has made enough number of Horizon games. Maybe they should go back to Killzone. And now PlayStation First Party is releasing multiplayer games on multi-platform, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So it would be cool to see them go back. What I like to start with is just the Killzone collection that would be playable natively on PS4, PS5.
Yeah. So usually these publishers start by remaking, right? Yeah, 1, 2, 3 pack. Then the new game.
Right, exactly. And that's, Sly Cooper 4 style or what you guys are planning with the Eco Collection with The Last Guardian.
Talk to Herman.
Right.
Pitch that idea.
He doesn't talk to me. All right.
Okay.
I wanted to ask you, so this is a game out of the ones I've listed that I was by far the most critical of. And I'm really curious because I know you were a big champion of it, what your memories of it are. I think you're going to know I'm going to bring up, which is Dreams.
I know. I know where you're going. Yes.
Dreams is a media molecule, long incubation media molecule project, a creation engine basically for people to create their own things and share with each other. It entered beta in 2018 and 2019 and launched in 2020. And its support ended in late 2023. And this is one of those games to me, and I'll be very curious what you think of this, where I feel like it's like I would have loved to see what Media Molecule could have done in that space where they didn't release anything from Little Big Planet 2, which is early 2011, except for Tearaway, of course, which is a small team. And then you get all the way to Dreams, and they really still haven't put anything out since then. And also, like, it seemed tortured behind the scenes. I went and looked it up because I was like, did I remember this right? It was teased in 2012, and then we saw it at the reveal in 2013 for PS4. I was there. That was exciting. And then it was supposed to go into beta in 2016. It was supposed to go into beta in 2017, and then it finally went into beta in 2018. So clearly it was challenging to get this game going. But you believed in it, and you wanted to get it across the finish line.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talk to me about this. Talk to me about Dreams.
Yeah. That was an amazing creation game. Yeah. Well, nowadays there's Gen AI, making amazing things quickly. But before Gen AI, that Media Molecule's engine with Dreams was amazingly efficient way to create beautiful graphics, and they created all the tools for sound creation, programming and AI. So our idea was to, allow anyone to be the game creator with the Dreams. And also because the beauty of the, images that the engine can create, very quickly, we imagined, that this can be a tool for, non-game, non-interactive linear media, like artists or some, creating quickly the, theater, concept or, even some, movie or TV show. So we imagine this, as starting on PS4 as a game creation tool, but to expand into more general creation tools on PC and, on to mobile. So we are thinking about, let's get this out on PS4 and get people to buy the game and create games and share games and, expand into interactive, creation support. So we devised, we didn't introduce, some business model to allow the professionals to use these tools to create the, actual products, outside the games. And, finally onto, mobile with massive audience. So that was our vision. That was the big vision. And somehow the studio were not able to execute, that vision, even though that vision came from the studio. And, I couldn't really, explain, I was not explained why that was the case. I think it was some technical challenges, because, because they are so excited to be able to do all that.
Yeah, it surprised me how long they worked on it. And they shed all, I think 4 out of 5 of the founders are gone now. So like over time, it just shed all of the important people.
They are exhausted.
Yeah, I bet. And it's probably unfortunate to work on something so long and really have, you're not releasing anything.
Yeah. I'd like to say I didn't make them work for so long. We were kind of encouraging, supporting, waiting. Somehow it didn't happen.
Was there a vision to, because I think Tearaway was so interesting. Like, was there a vision to let them split off and make smaller games like that, or would that have just been a distraction to the major project?
Oh, no. It was their idea, Tearaway, and it was a small team, and they are excited. We are excited. So if they had proposed, of course, we would have supported it. And because it's a game creation tool, I now remember we are considering to hire indie developers to use the Dreams team to create professionally made Dreams games to release on Dreams, and as well as independent, single player package onto PS Network, PS Store as their game. So we are talking with a couple of indie developers as well, and that vision didn't happen either. So we had all these ideas and very exciting, and they are so creative, but somehow it didn't happen.
Yeah,
they didn't even get the PS5 version out.
Right. Well, they got it to VR, but not the PS5 version and not a PC version. And I think that was the PC thing. I think lacking a PC version was a huge deal. And And as you said, not being able to export product off of it, I think there's no real, because I remember saying this to even people that were like, oh, I want to kind of experiment with it and make games. And I'm like, you might as well just mess with Game Maker or something, because your stuff at least will be able to be exported. You can even bring your Game Maker games to PlayStation. But that was what was surprising to me, was that a game like Dreams, I think, in my opinion, needed it needed a different vertical of support that almost no other game would need, which is like, we need to have people scouting for great games. We need to have people offering to, like you said, export those games on the PSN. We'll give you trophies. We'll split the money with you.
Oh, yeah, of course. We are thinking about that.
Right.
Once we had that tool set, right?
Right, exactly. And to me,
we didn't have that.
It was one of those things where it was, it needed to get games across the finish line to show, you can do it, and you can make money, and you can sell. But
tell me.
Yeah, I mean, that was what was a bummer, because I think a lot of people are bummed we didn't get, Little Big Planet we did get from Sumo Digital, and it continued on, but it's kind of a dormant, franchise now. I don't know if that would have been the right thing for them to continue on with that, but I'm eager to see what they do, like makes a game.
Yeah. They must be working on some new IP. I have no idea what they are working on right now.
They are working on something. It's in a small team, and I think I'm thrilled that they didn't get shut down because I don't want anyone to lose their jobs or for any studios to get shut down. But
the founders left, but still the team members are so good. Yeah, there's so many good people there.
I'm surprised. I think that they were given a lot of rope, and I think that's a sign of respect, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, so that's Dreams. I have this is an interesting one that I was curious about. Is Concrete Genie. This came out in the fall of 2019 from Pixel Opus, which was a small team. As I remember, this was a team of guys that were from Carnegie Mellon and San Jose University, right?
Yeah. They did a small game before that.
Entwined.
What's the name? Oh, yeah.
Entwined. Yes. And Entwined came out. That was a shadow drop at E3 2014. I remember that only because after E3, I went home and I had to review it. And it was on PS3, PS4, and Vita, as I recall. And that was a cool game. So they spent some time. That was 2014. So they spent about 5 years working on this game, Concrete Genie. I platinumed it. I liked it. I thought it was fine. It's not exactly my type of game, so I don't think I'm the greatest person to judge it. But it was artistic and interesting. And I know that you guys are really excited about your experience with that game company and Giant Sparrow and trying to kind of get something up and going and then getting ownership of it earlier, which is what happened with these guys. But what was surprising to me was them working on something for almost 4 years after Concrete Genie and then getting shut down and never really getting to show the world what they were working on. So it was like Pixel Opus is the kind of studio I think that you would champion most from your independent kind of pedigree, small and scrappy.
No, let me explain. So in my days, running the studios, I realized after we released great games like Journey and these games, we realized there's so many great indie games being made by independent studios, and the top, best games are coming to PlayStation anyway. And us, funding these small games, and we are able to support developers and produce great, high quality games. However, again at that time we are only able to release the games on PS platform. Small games not being able to release on PC, for example, was really limiting in terms of commercial potential. And so didn't do justice for these developers. And publishing side, marketing side was supporting big AAA titles. They wanted another God of War or Uncharted to push. So I would say, we are not able to get enough support for these small games that we are producing. That's the reason I stopped, or let's stop, making these small games. So the byproduct of that decision was the external production team at Santa Monica Studio who grew, that game company and Giant Sparrow, these really great teams, left the company and founded Annapurna Interactive.
Right.
And made the, publisher really successful. So that was good result. However, we stopped, making smaller games. But the Pixel Opus was an exception. That's something that Connie, in her studio wanted to do the incubation in her own studio. So it's in a small team right out of college, like, that game company was formed, from the USC. We housed the team right out of college in one space of Santa Monica Studio, the same way Connie, carved one space in her San Mateo studio and led the team to work on Entwined and Concrete Genie. So that was outside of our new strategy of not making small games because it didn't compete. But we really love the, talent there, very talented youngsters with the combination of a very senior creative person like Dominic Labilliard, who came from LucasArts. So Concrete Genie was a good product in my personal opinion, it was like a half creative. You can draw something, and half like a shooter or action.
Right.
And it was like in between. I would have hoped they would, nudge it to one or
the other,
one way or the other. Yeah. But overall, that game was good and people liked it. And the next project, I saw, and it was good. And I was very disappointed when I saw the news that it was canceled. And the setup was challenging. It was not just an internal project.
Interesting.
I won't be able to say more. But, there's some partner, working with partner is always challenging. So that might be the reason that I really don't know.
Yeah, I on one hand, the cancellation of the game and a small team like that made sense in that Sony seems to be chasing bigger things now. But I think, Concrete Genie, I think its reception, if anything, because people did like it and it sold pretty well, I think. But it came out. It's an art game, like you said, and it came out when that started to get a little dry for people. Like the same thing that helped Journey or The Unfinished Swan or whatever, or Flow was, I think, worn out by the time it got to Concrete Genie, where there were so many of those kinds of games. And, yeah. And so I think it fell through the cracks because of that. It's one of those games where if it came out 10 years earlier, 5 years earlier, it probably would have been like a really iconic game. Very similar to how I feel about Gone Home, which is a game I absolutely adore. But that game, if that game came out today, people would be like, what is this?
Yeah, good time.
Right.
It was,
I'm curious what you think of this one, Shu, as we move on. MLB The Show.
Oh, yeah.
I was curious what your memories are of this. I've always been kind of fascinated with this studio, and I wrote a big piece about them when I was at IGN about all of this, where,
nice. Thank you.
Yeah. Like I went and talked to the head of the studio at the time was Christian Phillips. And I stayed there for a while.
Chris Carter, right?
Right, exactly. Who used to like sleep in his office on like a mattress.
Yeah.
And I was fascinated by them because they had about 9 months to turn a game around every year. And on multiple platforms, it's now even more complicated because now they're launching on Xbox and Switch and all the rest. They obviously, this game obviously has a provenance with 989 Sports, which is a defunct, kind of brand now within Sony, with their MLB series. And the show begins in 2005, I want to say. I love this studio because I feel like this is a really important game to Sony. And my theory of the case, and I wonder what you think of this, is I think it passively, by seizing the MLB license for so long, I know this in my own experience with family and friends, where it's like, it made baseball players PlayStation fans just because that's where they had to go to play baseball games. And then you kind of get them through the back door. Now, that's not an advantage for Sony anymore because it's multi-platform, but it's funny how in the PS2, PS3, PS4 era, it kind of worked like that. Baseball fans had PlayStations. So obviously that was the intention, right, of having the license lockdown.
Well, intention was always to make a good game that sells enough units so that we can continue, right? And MLB, the show, met that. And something very interesting was what happened in the sports games. So there are many, many games out during PS1 days, and 999 Sports was competing with EA Sports, pretty well during PS1. But when I landed in the US, I realized that, because, only PlayStation teams, they are starting to make PS2 versions of their games after the last year's game were finished. It doesn't work that way, preparing for next gen. And EA, of course, was working on PC as well. So they are working on, gradually increasing capacity of the hardware. So they are totally ready. And they must have planned well in advance for the launch of PS2 as well to make the Madden and other games really shine on the platform. So we lost, all the franchise to, competition, except for MLB. So MLB was the only remaining. And in terms of license, MLB was always about not against exclusivity. they always wanted multiple companies to make games and compete. And so we didn't even try to get the exclusivity. But what happened was, because of the data-driven, so much, work involved in making sports games. So every year, winners got bigger and bigger and more successful for each genre. Almost every genre, there's only one survivor. When, talking about American football, it's EA, Madden. Talking about, soccer, football, it's EA. And talking about basketball, it's, 2K. And talking about baseball, it's MLB. Even though not every licensor made an exclusivity deal. And in terms of exclusivity deal, unless you really sign with a good developer, it can backfire, right? So we are always about, licensor, you should be open for every company. However, because of the nature of the games, only one brand became the survivor.
Right.
Even though Konami is competing on football, soccer genre, but not as big as EA. So MLB, the show, has been really, really successful. And, baseball is much smaller in terms of global audience compared to, soccer, football, or, basketball, but still large enough, because they're able to release games every year and there's no competition. And now even, multi-platform, that was forced, my understanding.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you about that.
The licensor. Yeah,
right.
MLB, the licensor, didn't like the fact that, Xbox fans, owners were not able to play MLB games. So they even tried to make their own MLB games and released on Xbox, that I remember. But of course, that game didn't compete. So the license has to be renewed in every few years. So I think that was a requirement to go multi-platform. But that kind of helped the studio because they are able to release on more, units and recoup, the development for other platform is incremental, right?
Right.
Yeah. So the studio must have been really, really successful.
It's interesting because we always assumed it was forced on Sony for two reasons. Number one is, well, we thought for different reasons. Either that the licensing fees went up so much that Sony was like, we have to really release on everything to make this worth our while at this point. Or more likely that MLB was like, you're putting the game on everything or you're not making the game anymore. And the surprising thing to me that I knew that Sony had nothing to do with it was when it went on Game Pass immediately. I was like, oh my God, they must be so mad that Microsoft did that, because at that point you understood that Microsoft was dealing with a third party like MLB Publishing, because Sony would never allow that to happen. So that's when you knew that it was out of Sony's hands.
Okay.
At least that's the way we put it together. But we were right; it was out of Sony's hands. Yeah, it's funny. People forget that San Diego studio had another sports franchise, which was NBA The Inside. And
many other.
Right.
We did like a college football, game day, the football, American football, and the hockey game, college basketball game, and the other sports game like ski game, Cool Borders.
Right, Cool Borders. Right. Yeah, it seemed like you could see the vision of being like MLB, the show, NBA, The Inside. And these would go back and forth, and they did for a while. I think the last NBA game was 2009. If people can correct me on that, but you're right. Everything seems to go towards a monopolist in those spaces, whether it's EA, 2K, or Sony. So it probably is, because I was going to ask you that, like, do you think that they should be going after these licenses? But really, it's what Christian Phillips said to me at the time, I think, was like, it's only worth it if we think we can make a better game. Because I know the NFL license is exclusive with Madden as far as simulation games are concerned, but all the other ones are out there for everyone and no one bothers anymore. So it really does. You're right. It must speak to that strategy. All right, let's see. I have a few more here. Let's go to this one because people are going to want to hear about this one for sure. I wanted to ask you about Uncharted Golden Abyss, the Vita launch game.
Mm-hmm.
What are your memories of this particular game? I actually think this game is really underrated. Obviously written and directed by our old friend John Garvin.
I loved the game.
Yeah, me too.
That was the showcase of PS Vita, and they put it off for the launch. And not many people know that Amy Hennig, creative director from Naughty Dog, worked really closely with Ben Studio, so much so that she almost broke herself. She was working on the Uncharted.
It would have been 3 at the time.
Yeah. So she had to split the time, and it was so hard for her, but she and Ben put it off. So it was not just a Ben effort, it was a joint effort between Naughty Dog and the Ben to get it out.
I thought it was a pretty special game. It's a prequel, which is cool. So it doesn't mess too much with the lore you already know. And I remember hearing that too and reading that back in the day. Maybe it was in interviews I did back in the day when it was that like she was pushing back a lot on John Garvin and those guys about things that didn't work, and that she was much more heavily involved than I think people gave her credit for or even understood at the time. And I think that might have been a PR strategy to not make that clear so that it didn't seem like she was distracted from Uncharted 3, so they didn't. I think there was a reason why that wasn't made clear. What is it like though, kind of letting another studio work on a crown jewel kind of IP like that isn't that team? This doesn't seem to really happen anymore, but back then it happened quite often, like Resistance, God of War, and so on, were worked at by external teams. These days,
God of War PSP games by Ready at Dawn were beautiful, right? And that had lots of input from Santa Monica Studio as well. So these, when we did these like offshoot games with other developers, we made sure the original developer studio was involved to do the quality control. And that was the case for the Golden Abyss as well. And I really loved the game. And I still miss the game. I wish, they ported it to more, current platform, PS4, PS5, or, even PC. That game would still play great.
Yeah, they would have to make a few changes. Like there was some of the camera functionality and like the light. Yeah, I remember. So my memory of it is that we imported it, and because it came out in December of 2011, and so we imported it. And I remember Sony PR begging us not to review it because they wanted the review.
Because beta launched in Japan first.
Right, exactly. So, and I have a funny memory of that. Like Greg posted on IGN confirmation, like it was like confirmed Sully is in Uncharted Golden Abyss, and I was so mad. I was like, dude, like, why are you spoiling? Like, we didn't. But I remember being on a plane going home for the holidays and holding it up to the light above me because you had to like do it for the map stuff. So they'd have to make a few changes, but I would love to see that too, because I actually think I like all the Uncharted games a lot, but I think it's actually probably even stronger than Drake's Fortune in a lot of ways. And it would be cool for more people to experience it, but they haven't. I think people were surprised. You talked to me a little bit about this. I certainly was surprised during the Vita era that there weren't more spin-offs. We did get kind of a half-assed Resistance game. We got Uncharted, we got Killzone, which is cool. But no Infamous, no God of War, no, were there any thoughts to kind of explore more of those franchises on Vita?
I think it was the timing issue, when, original studio was working on something. And, so, at one point, during the beta, after a couple of years of launch, so, we didn't announce that people guessed that, we stopped, making new beta games, right? Because we had to prepare for the PS4, and, I had finite budget and finite number of teams, and, it was my job to assign money and project from the given budget that I had every year. And budget was decided, based on our game's performance. So if we are making money, we'll be able to pitch for larger budget for the next year so we can expand. And in general, we are expanding, but the demand for a PS4 game, much larger game, were really incoming. So, we had to pull away from continuing to invest in Vita games and shift the money into PS4. So that was the reason, you have a list like a Freedom Wars, right?
Right.
And, the game was great and the game sold well on Vita. And also another franchise, another, 4-player, co-op game, by Inafune-san.
Soul Sacrifice.
Soul Sacrifice. Yeah. So we are actually working on Soul Sacrifice 2 and Freedom Wars 2, but, because of the budget limitation, I had to stop it and move to PS4.
Well,
so I think the reason we didn't do any other, like you mentioned, God of War, Infamous, was the timing probably that after we decided not to continue investing in PS Vita development.
You brought up Freedom Wars, and that's on the list, so we might as well logically go to that next. I was curious what you specifically thought. First of all, I love Freedom Wars. I think it's an awesome game. It's an awesome world. It's a great idea. The idea of having these insane prison sentences and getting 5 years added to it because you sit down wrong or something. It was a really clever, cute idea. I love Percy Prappa. I think that's a dope character. Love that character. Now, I know this was made by Dimps, so this is an external team.
Dimps, yeah.
And I was reading a little bit about the guys that actually made the game. I'm going to butcher these guys' names, but Toshiyuki Yasui.
Yeah.
And Junichi.
He was a game designer.
Yeah. Right. He's like kind of the creative force behind it, I guess. And then Junichi Yoshizawa was the producer.
Yeah, and producer on the SIE side.
I think these are just interesting because these guys were pretty instrumental, apparently, in Metaphor Refantasio. And so they both worked on that game, which is an awesome game. So I thought I'd make that connection for people. But
Yoshida-san gave me a copy of like a special version of Metaphor last year. Awesome. That game is absolutely exceptional. And Dimps, of course, is really intertwined with Bandai Namco with their anime licenses. They do the Sword Art games and Dragon Ball stuff. And I'm pretty sure Sony owns a piece of Dimps, right? Like Sony, I think. Really?
Yeah, I was reading that online that they own or at least were part of the investment that got Dimps off the ground. And Bandai Namco also obviously owns a piece of them, which is makes sense since they publish all their games. I wanted to ask you about Freedom Wars, specifically about what do you think about it kind of coming back out earlier this year, and this idea of Sony sub-licensing its games to Bandai Namco for release on other platforms. This is happening with Everybody's Golf and Patapon.
Sony is not sub-licensing. Sony is licensing.
Oh, licensing. License. Right.
Licensing IP. So that's a new thing. After I moved from first party, the new first party under Herman started to license IPs that they no longer are working on new games. So, not many people notice, but at the launch of PSVR 2, Fantavision was remade, right? With PS Vita 2, PSVR 2 functionality. That was created by the original creator of Fantavision, Kanetaka-san. He was now a freelance independent, and he worked with the independent publisher, Cosmomachia, and so SIE licensed the IP to Cosmomachia to create for them to create the Fantavision remake. So that was the first, and a couple others. Hotshot Golf, Everybody's Golf was also announced, and the Freedom Wars came out.
Right, and then I guess the Tomorrow Children as well, right?
Tomorrow Children, yeah. In terms of Tomorrow Children, it was not licensed. It was like sold back to Q Games.
Nice.
So it was a different arrangement. Yeah. So now SIE, first party PlayStation Studio, is more open to license the IPs that they are not necessarily working on by themselves. So you may see or hear other, old IPs from PlayStation being remade or, new games being made to release on, future multi-platform. So I think that's a great thing for the company to be able to do that.
Yeah, I agree.
And the fans of these IPs can enjoy the better version or sequel for these IPs.
I was especially thrilled to see Freedom Wars get that treatment because it was kind of I loved it on Vita, but it was a shame to see it stranded there. And I don't think anyone really cared. It didn't seem to do very well, or at least didn't get a lot of talk when it came out on PS5. But I haven't played it yet, but I went and bought it because I wanted to show support and hopes that Bandai Namco continues to do this with other games.
And the game remake was developed by Dimps as well, the original, developer.
Right.
So the licensing is not just, money grab. You make sure the plan is good. So like original creator is involved or some good, experience by the developer.
What I would love is to see Bandai Namco work as a liaison between Sony and MediaVision to get Wild Arms into their hands and continue that.
That's another popular franchise that has never been worked on.
I love Wild Arms. Love it. So that's a favorite of mine. Okay, interesting. And then the final one I wanted to talk to you about, and this is time we did this perfectly.
Thank you.
Is Returnal. The reason I wanted to talk to you about this is obviously a PS5 game, early-ish 2021 from Housemarque, one of the great studios that Sony has nurtured and now owns.
It's my best, my favorite PS5 game.
It's
Returnal.
Yeah, out of all the the things you can only play on, I guess it's on PC now, but yeah, like the exclusive PS5 games, it's one of mine as well. And it took me a while to get it, but I stuck with it, and I ended up loving it. I wanted to ask you about this because this obviously came out after you were out of your position as head of Worldwide Studios, but anyone who knows how games work know that you were obviously the person who greenlit this game. And I think it's really a special game. And you know what I think about a lot, and I wonder if you remember this, but in the summer of 2017, Housemarque released a statement that said arcade is dead. Do you remember this?
Yeah, I remember.
And it was really sad. It's a really sad letter of basically them saying, like, we make this certain type of game. No one seems to really care, and we have to do something, or we're not going to survive, basically. And it really hurt me in my heart because I was like, these guys are masters of gameplay. And they figured, I mean, you must have seen this in the prototypes and everything that they pitched to you, but they figured it out. They translated their entire style to a proper 3D game, and it was masterfully done. So congratulations on seeing the vision.
Thank you. Well, if my memory is correct, they released the announcement right after they released Nex Machina. That was not PlayStation, our first party game. Right. That's their own game.
Yeah, they published that themselves.
That was reviewed really well, but didn't sell. Maybe because they didn't have publisher or they didn't have Sony marketing.
I think that's what happened.
Yeah. So they announced that arcade was dead. Meaning that they will stop making small games. But in reality, because they had to put everyone on Returnal, so that was the reason. So we were working with them after Resogun, for a long time on Returnal, and Returnal was one of the few several titles that we planned for the launch of PS5 because games are getting bigger and bigger, right? Like God of War game or Spider-Man game or usually, Resistance for Man or Killzone Shadowfall, we used to make new hardware dedicated exclusive launch title by, big studio, right? But the PS5 launch, the numbers didn't work out. We couldn't think of putting a big game on PS5 only, with, install base of 0 to start, right? So that's the reason we had to make the cross-gen games for these big franchise, between PS4 and PS5. But we really wanted to show off, what PS5 could do. So we started a few, several smaller, like a AA size games to be PS5 exclusive, to take advantage of some of the things that PS5 does well. And in terms of Returnal, it was 3D audio that Mark Sony really loved to work with Housemarque to show off, so that it's a 3D, action shooter, right? But with 3D audio, you are able to hear where the enemy is. Even the enemy is behind you or above you. You knew where it is coming from. So it was a great showcase of PS5 feature. And it was not day one, but it came out within, a year of the launch. And I loved how they kind of interpreted their arcade, all these bullet hell shooter into 3D action. I loved it.
It was, I've described it as mesmerizing, actually, like the graphics, where almost every boss fight I would die because I would just be looking at it. Right? Because it would be like these beautiful bullets, coming at you.
Wow.
And I'm like, I'm not even like prepared to do anything about it. I'm just really enraptured with it. It was really a really special game. And I was thrilled to see Sony put a ring on it and buy them, because I'm not into Sony really buying too many teams, but that made sense. It's like these guys, they survived. I was so glad that they survived to be able to do that game, because they've been great forever. I mean, Super Stardust is a masterpiece. Dead Nation is a masterpiece. Resogun
is a masterpiece.
Oh my God. So good. It's so wonderful. Good. So the one game I haven't played by them actually is Matterfall. I never played Matterfall. I have to play that one still. But I played everything else. Alien Nation, all the Next Machina. They did that game with Ubisoft, Outland, which was really good. Anyway.
I loved Alien Nation as well.
Yeah. Alienation was cool. It got a little too sophisticated for me, like too much loot. Like Dead Nation to me was the more perfect way to do that. And Dead Nation on when they ported it to PS4 and Vita, it was awesome. Shoot, that's it. I mean, I appreciate your time. I hope you enjoyed yourself.
We did it.
Yeah, we did.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you for keeping me on pace.
Thank you. So when you come up with new idea like this, I'll be back on your show.
Well, we can do it again. I mean, maybe what I'll do maybe I'll reach out to you in May. Maybe I'll reach out to you like late summer. I'll give you a little bit of a break. You've had enough probably, but I'll reach out to you in a few months, and maybe what we'll do is we'll ask the audience, what are 10 games you want to hear about?
Okay.
And then and so there are games that I was on that I pulled off the list. Like I had Tokyo Jungle on the list.
That's a
like
good one.
I had Africa on the list. I don't know if you remember that game.
Oh, that's an amazing game.
Yeah. So we have much more to get to, but I do appreciate your time in the interim. And by the way, many congratulations on this new consultancy. I hope you find enormous, your next chapter of success. And
one of the clients is Kepler Interactive. They are having great year this year with Expedition 33, and the rematch is coming up in summer.
Awesome.
In Brazil, they are talking about rematch, right? It's big in soccer.
I just started Expedition 33 yesterday because I was working my way in platinuming Indiana Jones, which was good. It wasn't the greatest thing, but I started Expedition 33 and I was sucked in. I played it for like 3 or 4 hours. I was like, wow, this is special.
Yeah, something special. Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to playing more. Shu, I appreciate you. Be safe on your travels. Many congratulations on all your success. It's always good to talk to you. Thank you for taking the time to be here.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Yep. Bye.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Colin's Last Stand LLC, and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show is conceived by, is written by, and is directed by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-hosts are Chris Raygun Maldonado and Dustin Furman. The show is produced by executive producer Dustin Furman. All of Last Stand's theme music is by my best friend, Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest tier, and we're grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor. Thank you.